colleagues, Michael Green and Chris Lorch, are going to be doing the demos themselves, and they can introduce themselves again when they're on task. So the things we want to do today: explore the capabilities, let you know what these tools, AI tools, can and can't do. Chris and Michael are going to show you some examples of what they've created, well, what those tools have created for them. Let's go with that. And they'll be in live demos, and they'll also talk about the strengths and weaknesses of the AI tool itself. The first thing we're going to do is go to ChatGPT. I'm going to do something ahead of time. If I could figure out where my poll tool is, there we go. Zoom at this point has so many things that you can do, which is great, but you can't find them. So I've put up a quick poll for us to find out where you are in the timeline of getting to know AI. Ooh, this might be more even than I anticipated. All right, most people voted already. 30% of you have already dug in. Well, I hope we give you something new today, or you may be sharing something with us in chat or during the Q&A. So that's great. Technical issues, yep, I feel like that happens more often than not. And about 30% of you haven't dug into it yet. So hopefully we'll give you an overview today. Thanks for sharing that. I'll let you see the entire pie chart. Well, it doesn't display as a pie chart, but you know what I mean. All right, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to my colleague, Chris Lorch, who's going to be doing the ChatGPT. You can always type in chat if you have questions along the way. When he's finished, we will stop for a real Q&A. I'll go first to the questions that are in chat, and then if we have more time, then you can unmute yourself and we'll get into one-on-one questions. All right.
Great, thanks, Elise. Everyone hear me okay? Great. Let's hop into what ChatGPT is. So ChatGPT, it might not mean a lot to you, but it actually means a lot in terms of what we're talking about here today. So ChatGPT is an acronym. It's a machine learning language model. And what that really means is it's using information it's already received, and it's creating something new and original. So if you're hearing, all sorts of wild stories about what ChatGPT can do, hopefully this will help ground some of those conversations and give you an idea of the actual types of day-to-day things that ChatGPT can do right now. And of course, the content of what we're about to say may change over time and will change probably in the next week. There are constantly updates happening to ChatGPT. And so when you go on the web, the version that you use this month will probably be different from the version you use next month. The one we're going to use is the latest one that's available. And so the idea of a generative text is that it's different from sort of written text, and we'll get into what that means, but it's predicting the next thing that it's going to say. So word by word, character by character, it's looking at what has already been said in a conversation or has already been said on the web. I think it went through 5 years of training. I have here in my notes that somebody prepared for me. That's very nice of them. I think that was the person who actually added those, which is helpful. And then, the transformer aspect, it's using neural network processing, which means that it's using a sophisticated set of directions that were given to it a long time ago, and then it's creating natural language, the things that you're going to read and that you may have already read if you are in the group of people here. So it looks like we have people who've run into technical issues every time they try. So let's describe briefly how you would log into ChatGPT. you would navigate to this URL, chat.open.ai.com. Just type that into your address bar in your web browser. Follow the prompts to create an account. And at that point, you would need a phone to receive a login code. So that might be a challenge. And that also might fall into the know who has time for that category of things. But trust me, it's worth giving it a shot, maybe, or you can just watch. And this is what you might see. ChatGPT is at capacity. So if you get that screen, you'll check back later, or you can buy ChatGPT Plus, which lets you skip the line. Gotta love it. It's like $20, but we're going to try it. So, okay, so this is what you'll see when you're logged in. I just, took a screenshot of what that page will look like. But before, and so then once you get there, you'll think, okay, what am I actually doing? What can ChatGPT do for me? Or what can I do for ChatGPT? Actually, you can use your, I'll explain in a second. So you can write and debug computer code, write poetry and song lyrics. And these are Mark Hart came up with a longer list, and I pulled a few that we'll try out. So you can generate some ideas. You can make different lists of something random, or you could give it some ideas and then it can create a list for you. It can give you an outline, so I'll show you what that looks like as well. You can make comparisons and contrasts, and finally summarize and paraphrase. I think that's the last one of my notes here. Yep. Summarize like large groups of information. This is the last one. And then you can also use this to, for example, write a resume or cover letter. You can reformat content, and you can use a specific format that you designate, you ask it to do. Okay, that's a lot of prefacing. Let's talk about how to actually create the dialogue itself. So you want to write how you would chat if you were talking to a person. So remember, you're having a conversation with a sort of virtual assistant. You're not just conducting like a search query that you would to Google. So you're not just typing something in a search bar. Instead of putting in a bunch of keywords and hoping for the best, think about how you talk to the person that you're interested about a topic that you're interested in. It's not a keyword search. Frame the conversation carefully. So it's important, if you want to get the most out of ChatGPT dialogue, you have to recognize that there's going to be some context that you're going to provide, and it'll help you better understand the nature of your what you're trying to ask for and provide more useful responses. Make sure to provide some to get the best possible responses. It's important to provide as much specificity as possible. So you could, rather than ask something general, you can use people, times, places, in like measurements, amounts, to sort of ground the conversation or to keep things scoped. Let's do it. Let's go in and try this out. I'm going to change my screen share over to a live demo. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. I'm gonna swap to. I realized that, so we have two different accounts. We have one that has ChatGPT Plus, so I have to jump all the way over to that one. So I'll hop in there. Let's do that. Bear with me, folks. There we go. Okay, so here's the interface. On the left, you have previous conversations that you've had. Obviously, you can zoom in and check out some of the questions, things that we've already talked about here. Let's try a code. We have a little outline here. Let's do a code idea. So I'm going to copy this over, save you the time of watching me type everything in. In LaTeX, how do I represent differential equation? So for example, if I went in Google and I type that in, you might get sort of an interesting answer over here that is pulling from a specific website. That's not what is about to happen here. We're about to have at least an original or semi-original, depending on how you view it, response to this question. And it's generating here, and you can just wait for it. But what what I would expect is, yeah, okay, so we're gonna get some code here that is gonna, like a little code excerpt with a specific formatting that it's a SQL code that's going to demonstrate how to use LaTeX, which is a scientific notation if you're not familiar with it. And it's just going. You can also use ChatGPT to fix bugs in your code. So if you have existing code that you want to, you need some description of how it's doing something wrong, you can do that. Here's one that I did earlier. That was, I asked ChatGPT to give me a random character from history. I pulled up Josephine Baker and pulled up some information. I said, imagine that Josephine was alive today and you wanted us to make her a homepage. Can you provide some code to get her started? And it just made me a whole bunch of HTML and CSS code. And it wasn't all that pretty. So I did a little bit of cleanup, but let's see. So here, I'm going all over the place. Sorry, folks. Okay, so let me copy this example that it generated for me. I'm going to go to just a quick online viewer. So let's see what that actually looks like. You need to go somewhere else, but it just made this sort of really basic page, but I think it gives you a sense of, it's just immediately making this up based on information that already has. It's creating sort of a, this is really a flat HTML page, but the idea is there, right? The idea is that it can just create code from seemingly scratch. Okay. Let's go back to our interface here. How am I doing on time? Let me look. So we're doing okay on time. That's our code section. Let's do something fun. Let's make up a little poem, shall we? So let's make me a sonnet on a random topic. Actually, you know what? Rather than be something random, let's say on camera crazies. That's pretty generic prompt, so we'll see what it does. And this also speaks to the sort of format idea here, that you can have something that's just created automatically. Oh, how camera crazies, how your roar doth ring. That's great, but here's another thing that I was going to point out. There's the regenerate response, and so it'll regenerate. It'll create a brand new one that, if you Google this too, you're not going to find quite this response somewhere out on the web. This is not copied and pasted from somewhere else. This is just being created with a prediction engine. And you can also, you could say, incorporate UNC fandom and Coach K. Limerick in this topic. See, now you can see that it's going to start to focus, rather than just on the camera crazy, it's going to focus on the rivalry. So now we have a few different elements here that are being put into the mix. And if folks have a way, we could, add Cavill to set the scene. Switch to a different poetry format. Legendary Cavill, a source of pride. I'm realizing maybe it's hard to read through the screen share, but some of this is actually pretty fun to check out. Okay. So let the fans of UNC contend that the better school in the end, for in Kville, the Duke fans will forever reign, their passion for the game, an eternal flame. It's fun. It's fun, right? Let's try, and I'm using a site called ShareGPT to skip by, but here's an example where I said, I'm a literary critic. Give me your 3 favorite books of all time. Gave me a few different books. And then I said, summarize each one of those in the form of a haiku. And it made a quick haiku from all 3 of those books. And I'm pausing just to give people time to read. I don't want to just keep skipping through things, but I also want to make sure we have time here. But the thing is, if I do that again, if I say, okay, pretend you're a literary critic. Give me 3 books in a particular genre that you like. Very quick. Okay, so there's dystopian genre. You gotta love it. Classic. Okay, so let's come up with a little haiku summaries for each, please. Yes. Big Brother's watchful eye looms. Brave new worlds, pleasure and control, a society engineered, individuality lost. I would say that I think randomness, I have noticed, is not quite the same here. Sometimes I think it's looking for, well, I'm not going to speculate, but sometimes I'll ask for something random and it'll give me the same response several times, which speaks more to the fact that it's predictive and it's generative rather than it being, something that uses a randomization engine. We'll come back to that. Here's a fun one. Outline. I'm writing a blog post about the best teaching and learning features in Canvas. Can you give me an outline to work from? Sure, here's an outline to get you started on your blog post. I'm going to look at the meeting chat while we're here. Rachel says, you've had the same experience. The more often Rachel uses it, the easier it seems to get in. Yeah. In Med, we've asked ChatGPT to write patient vignettes and cases. That's really cool. Great. So I have this outline over here that I could use to start writing a blog post. And I could ask ChatGPT to write me a blog post if I wanted to. I won't do that right now. It'll really just go and go. But you can sort of see the idea that this is a good starting place for you to build something out. Let me think. Here's an idea. Let's take a resume. Say this is my resume. It's not my resume, but say this is my resume. And I wanted to sort of improve it yeah, I want to improve my resume. How do I do that? Actually, I have give me some tips on how to improve my resume. I'm trying to work in the financial industry, and I have a lot of interest in improving my work experience, specifically in this resume. And I'll just paste in that whole thing. Oops, turn up my voice. There we go. I was just using a voice dictation. So it's going to give me some tips, but then I can actually, after this, I can ask it to actually do the make the fixes for me, which is pretty interesting as well. All right, so we're going to hop back into the slides in just a second here. Okay, so yeah, they're even saying, you know, you want to focus on your certifications, these types of things. Avoid fancy fonts and colors. These are good tips. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to do here, but I had another cool demo that maybe I'll provide some other way, but you can ask it to write chord progressions from different artists. But you even have one. Oh yeah, combine the different styles of artists into a single chord progression of Ed Sheeran, Schubert, and Mozart. And it explains why it's doing these things in some examples. And I like this idea because you can sort of take multiple inputs and then just see what types of ideas it can create. And then you can have it regenerate it. You can have it keep doing those things. As to the actual musical benefit, I would say it's dubious. I wouldn't make it your composer for your next event. All right, so here's one more example. I'm crafting a presentation for an audience. List the tasks that ChatGPT is good at and not good at in the context of higher education. So here's some tasks that ChatGPT is, I would say, better at. And by me, I'm saying ChatGPT is saying that these are good. It's good at these tasks in higher education, teaching and learning. You can, ChatGPT can help students and instructors quickly summarize and synthesize information from multiple sources. It can provide quick and accurate answers to factual questions, such as definitions of key terms or concepts, which can save time for students and instructors while trying to understand new material. I think we'll come back to that one. I sometimes struggle with the factual aspect. I've noticed some things, and you may have as well if you've used it. It can help students generate writing prompts and outlines for essays, which can be useful for assigning or writing prompts or writing assignments. And then you can also use it as a recommendation engine, sort of personalized recommendations for learning resources and study strategies. So you can students can optimize their learning and improve their performance in class. And then you can also use it to provide feedback on student writing. I wouldn't substitute this for your actual grading, but it can at least help students themselves maybe see what's missing from their writing and could give you ideas on the types of feedback that you might provide to them. Things it's not great at. And these seem maybe obvious, but I think it's important to consider how much value that you provide as a teacher, that your students provide back to you as students. ChatGPT is not great at real-time feedback, such as laboratory experiments or group projects. It's not really great at evaluating subjective work, art, music, or creative writing, even though earlier it said those things about those works. I would say they're somewhat, it's reflecting other people's views. It doesn't necessarily have your original view. And I also wouldn't use it to provide emotional support because it's a robot, it's a computer. Teaching complex concepts, advanced mathematics, advanced computer programming. I think when you get deeper and deeper, ChatGPT maybe isn't quite as useful in those cases. You need someone with in-depth domain knowledge, qualified instructors with deep expertise. And finally, building rapport with your students in your class is not necessarily something ChatGPT is going to do for you, is it? It's not going to facilitate group discussion. Finally, I just want to touch on ethics. So using this as a tool, not as a replacement, citing, you want to cite generated text that ChatGPT makes as a source. You would want to be very specific and provide specific prompts like I described before in order to improve this, and then proofread and edit generated text. Have fun while using it. You may have noticed this is actually not something I wrote. This is something ChatGPT wrote for me. And I don't like these bait and switches, but I'm just going to be transparent with you. I asked ChatGPT what to tell you about itself. And if it sounded stilted, like what I was saying was stilted, it's because I didn't write this. I was just copying what it said. But everything earlier, for the most part, unless I had something below, it was real. Trust me. But yeah, here's an example at the bottom right. You can cite. You can use sort of the citation. There's not an official APA citation guide. We won't go into that. You can talk to your friendly librarian. I think Lee's out there. Who else is out there? How do I get more out of this? So this is, we're nearing the end of my section, and then we'll hop into Michael's section. Again, remember, ChatGPT is a conversational tool. You're trying to have a conversation with it. It remembers what you already said, and each respective chat is going to be different. So if you realize the conversation's going in a weird direction, just start a new one. Try asking follow-up questions. Don't just start with something and then say, okay, that one's done. You can sort of have a back and forth, kind of a jam session in a way. And you can also ask it to try again. So you can ask it to, you can say regenerate. You can you can add a little surprise. You could say, hey, add something here, add a little twist into the discussion. You can try on different authors, characters. You can ask ChatGPT to pretend to be somebody that it isn't, kind of creepy. But actually it can provide sort of a new tone and make it interesting. So yeah, consider the tone. Problems. ChatGPT is prone to hallucinating, making things up, does a lot of making things up. It's a little unfortunate. Broken references to things, sometimes link rot. And it tells you these things right on the first page. It's limited information, so only up until a couple of years ago now. And AI models have inherent biases. That shouldn't be a footer here. That should be really present and concern. It's something I think that OpenAI is committed to in what they're describing and what they've written about. And as I just mentioned, it lacks creative voice, kind of sound boring. So if you're using it to replace your own writing, just realize that maybe it's not that it lacks the human touch. It's just that it's going to be generic in the way that it works. Last slide, I promise. What's next for ChatGPT? It's going to interact with, and this is a transitional moment here. It's going to interact with other API or other apps and AI tools. So Midjourney, hint, hint, coming soon. DALL-E is another tool that generates images that OpenAI creates. And Wolfram Alpha is an example of some of the tool that has been used for quite a while, but would be good at generating some of the more computational answers. So filling in the gaps here, generating prompts for other tools. So keep an eye out for other models of ChatGPT that are coming up. I think the 4th version is going to be coming up this year. It's going to have it has this idea of multimodal AI. So you saw how I was talking about moving content or creating a chord progression in a song. Well, pulling in other tools that will play that music, for example, or tools like Descripts that create video. So hopefully these are some interesting ideas of how we can, what we can sort of anticipate very soon. Open up the floor to questions.
All right, I'm gonna kind of start in the what am I trying to say? In the chat to kind of bring up some of the themes that are going on. Chris, people had some questions about what was happening on your left-hand side. You had a zillion tabs. Um,
Oh,
what was that about? Where did you get it?
oh,
It went by fast. So was that part of the, and I don't know the question answer either. Is that part of the paid version that you're able to capture conversations that way? What was happening there?
let me pull that up just because I think on the left side of the screen here, you're talking about all of the different prompts. These are just some of the prompts that I've written before. So for example, if I click into one, these are conversations that we just had. Oop.
Right. So I think the question is, so those get saved on the left-hand side, or you did something special to save them on the left-hand side?
They're automatically saved and they're automatically titled.
Okay.
And then you can click the little, if you click it, you can remove them one by one or just clear them all together.
Okay. Along that vein, someone asked about how did you get your resume in there? And I believe that was cut and paste.
Yep, just copy
That
paste.
also led, you just copied and pasted a resume in there.
Yep.
Okay. That also led to a bunch of questions about privacy of your data and using ChatGPT, whether that resume went in, is it going to be saved somewhere?
Very
From
good
my
question.
knowledge, that means yes. Our data went in somewhere. There are multiple privacy issues, but Chris and Michael, do you want to comment on that a little bit?
Yeah, I think you want to be smart about how you use your data and not share anything personal. And I'm glad someone asked about that. I'm not sure how I didn't mention that in the first place. I think you do give up a sense of privacy here, and so you want to be cautious. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah, I mean, I also give up privacy every time I use Amazon too. So um, don't put your social security numbers in either, for sure.
Their privacy policy is posted on their
Yeah, that was
homepage.
going to be my suggestion. Read their privacy
Yeah.
policy, the terms of use, the things we all do, before we sign up for our accounts.
I
Yeah,
put the FAQ link somewhere in the chat, but if you Google ChatGPT and FAQs, you can come into that. Michael, you were watching the chat too. Did you see some other theme or question that I forgot to hit on?
There are definitely some that we missed, but I don't know about a theme.
Okay, either.
I have not. Yeah, I see that we've got a question about the new Bing implementation of ChatGPT. I have not gotten access to use that. I would highly suggest you read the multiple New York Times articles about that journalists' interactions with Bing, Bing GPT or whatever its code name is. We'll find the links for what I'm referring to. It's interesting and shows the potential and the remaining amount there is left to improve upon for something like that, I think.
Yeah, and the Bing AI is still in beta, so the public does not have access. So I've never used it, but the New York Times articles are pretty amazing and a little scary.
Yeah.
Walter was asking if you use ChatGPT, can they get to other things on your computer? No, unless I'm misunderstanding something.
yeah, that's my impression is that you wouldn't. I was, so just to clarify, I was moving between different windows and copying and pasting from those windows, but unless you do that, I don't think you're risking anything being moved between those websites without your permission.
Sorry, someone just asked if you could put it in a PDF. Yeah, you could copy and paste, and whether it'll make a PowerPoint. Again, it's copy and paste, but I just was working with Canva or something else, and the new AI in there asked me if I wanted them to if I wanted it to generate a PowerPoint for me based on a theme. So if it's not in, I can't remember where I was. I think it was Canva. I don't remember. So it's popping up everywhere, just like when you write an Outlook email and it tries to complete it and says hit tab if you want this phrase to show up.
That's right.
It says,
ChatGPT is getting all the headlines, but what's really important is to think about this is just a model that will be relicensed and integrated all over the place, and improved upon and integrated as part of all of the various software packages we may use. In instances like what Elise just said, we'll be seeing more and more of that.
Yes, Logan says it's lying. It's lying a lot. It does things like you ask for citations and it'll put something in there, and then you ask it if the citations are correct, and it'll say, no, I had to fill in the blanks, more or less. So yeah, lots of things aren't real in here, but it is good at summarizing and reconfiguring knowledge that already exists.
One
All right,
thing
I'm
that I
gonna
think
cut
is,
this.
oh, I'm
Sorry.
sorry.
Yeah, Chris, go ahead. Final comment.
I was just going to say, one thing that is unique, I think, about this tool is that you can ask it if it was making something up, which is not great that you have to ask it that it's making something up. But some of the tools are pretty confident that they're right when they're wrong. And I think it's interesting to say, hey, are you sure about that? And then it goes, yeah, actually, I went back and verified that information. You know, I was asking it, he told me a story about jazz history, and it gave me a story about Charlie Parker that actually occurred after he had passed away. It said 57, and it was just a really wild example of a lot of historical inaccuracies. But you're able to sort of parse out what it was trying to get at and the types of information that it's trying to pass along. And you can see that over time, these types of use cases will become better and better, I would hope.
All right, I know, Quincy, you've got your hand raised, but I do have to move on to the next thing because I want to give Michael Green some space to show us Midjourney. And I have saving your chat, so I will try and get to the things that we can answer in our follow-up email with all the other resources.
Cool. Chris, would you stop sharing and I will share my screen here. And then I'll pull the chat back up, get everything back up and running. We should be good to go now. Yeah, hi folks, I'm Michael Green. I'm the Associate Director for Learning Technology Services and Strategy here at Learning Innovation. And I'm gonna do an introduction to the Midjourney AI, similar in many ways to ChatGPT and what we've been discussing, but also quite different. The most immediate difference you'll see is that it does not respond with text. It's going to respond by generating an image based on what you send to it. And these are some examples from these users listed here from the Midjourney homepage. So it is an AI used to create images or art from a language prompt in a similar fashion to ChatGPT. There are great alternatives. This is certainly an ever-evolving industry. The DALL-E model is actually built by the same folks that make ChatGPT. There's also Stable Diffusion. We picked Midjourney because it was good at the things that I was trying to play around with a few weeks ago when I was exploring all this. But I would recommend, if you want to try any of these out, that you try several, certainly before you decide to pay for any of them, because they're all a little bit different. And so what can it do? It can generate an image from text that you put in. You can start from an image. So if you have a file on your machine that you want to upload, or if you have a publicly available image, you can kind of seed the generation with that in combination with some text. So you want to maybe morph that image into something else, and it will generate a new image. You can take multiple images. I think it accepts up to 5 at this point, and it will blend them together to create a new image. And then it also has some refining capabilities, similar to what we saw in the earlier demos around taking something and just kind of iterating on it a little bit. The sign-up process, in my opinion, is much more complex than ChatGPT. So I did want to walk through that because Midjourney is not an entity upon itself. You have to first you create a Discord account. So the platform that you will access this AI in is the Discord platform. And so you'd visit discord.com and create an account there. Fill in that appropriate information, very typical email verification process. When you log in, it will want you to create a server because it's got its own, agenda and use case that it wants you to do. You do not need to do that. If all you're trying to do is play with Midjourney, you could just click the little X there and move on. If you get to a screen like this, this is the Discord interface and you're good to go from this perspective. And then now you could actually go to the Midjourney website and click join the beta. And that will take you to a screen like this. And it's now using your Discord account. The Midjourney doesn't manage an account creation process in the same way that we saw with ChatGPT. And so now we're accepting an invite to the Midjourney server, so to speak. You may be asked some questions. I did this on Wednesday and I was not asked questions. I did it again on Thursday and I was. So it's clear that they're evolving their user onboarding experience here. So you may get asked some questions like that. And if you see something like this, you are finally done, you're into Midjourney. The images here will be different. It is going to be displaying whatever users have created immediately before you logged in. And so you won't see these particular photos, but you'll see now a lot of different things. These are called channels here. If you've used Slack or Microsoft Teams, it's a similar platform, Discord, to that. And so now we're in Discord and we're in the Midjourney server there. Before you can interact with the AI, you do have to accept the terms of service, and that's done. It's kind of difficult to see because I'll show you when we get in there, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of people playing with this, and that's a big difference between particularly the free account in Midjourney versus ChatGPT. It was very kind of singular one-to-one experience that Chris was demoing, but we'll see by default, this is kind of a more of a social space that you interact with the AI. And you need to end up buying a pro account to kind of interact in a more private one-to-one way. So you'll see this accept terms of service button. You click that, and then you can finally create some prompts and create some images. So I'm going to do some live demo, and I need some inspiration. And so I've broken up the types of images we're going to try into, if your first name begins with A through F, G through L, M through R, or S through Z. So type into chat, the various things here, a subject for our image, an artist or an art style for an image, an environment you want to place that subject, or a mood or emotion of the image. And we will give it a go and see what happens. So I'm going to switch my tab over, and hopefully we're now seeing Discord. And I'm going to actually, while we're getting some responses here, show you that social space, right? So they're going to tell you have to come into the newbies room to use it by default. And we'll just kind of scroll down here and you'll see this is everybody else that's currently online using the AI. And I find this quite interesting. You get to see their prompts, you get to see the images that it creates. A little risky for a live demo, but it's Friday. So I'm not going to stay in this social space for too long, but just so you can get a sense, because there's great ways to kind of say, oh, this person, wrote it this way. Let me try that. Let me add these words. Great place to kind of get inspiration. So let me pull my chat window back up and hopefully make it nice and tall to see some examples. Keep them coming in because we've got time to play around with this. So now I'm back in just the bot. This is just me and the bot. And so down here at the bottom is the editor for Discord, and I type /imagine. That's the default way to interact with Midjourney. And let's see. So we're going to say a dog on Mars. In the style of Picasso, and see what it does. And I'll create a couple other ones. So we'll just queue up a couple of them here. So we've got, oh boy, Cardi B in Wakanda. Now this will be weird, in the style of Jackson Pollock. And keep them keep them coming if you want. Oh, see, I'm forgetting my emotions. Yeah, so we'll do this again. We'll do our imagine dog on Mars in the style of Picasso, sanguine. See what it does differently. And you can kind of see what I also like kind of watching it work, right? So if it shows you kind of each stage as it goes through. It's 10% done, because the way it works is it starts from noise and then incorporates what you've requested into it to create what it has created. And similarly to what Chris was saying, if you do like a reverse image search on Google, you will not, find these. You might find things that look like it, but these particular exact images are new. And so David, it refines as it's working, right? So I'll have to do another one and kind of pick out. It'll say like I'm 9% done with this, I'm 30% done with this, and each time it'll become more clearer, more details. I didn't mean to intend that it refines in real time the model that it's using, because I don't believe it works quite like that. They have to do a lot of work to update the model to work differently. Let's do some more. So now we've got, and so I do want to, I'll open to more different kind of prompts. If you have something that is not my framework for a prompt, but something you would be interested to see the entire prompt, or if you something you might use in one of your courses or your work, feel free to put it in the chat, and I'd be happy to put it in here. So we're going to do David Bowie as a Pokemon. This has got to be amazing, right?
There's no way it's not amazing.
Let's see, David Bowie as a Pokemon. Where are we going to put David at? Give me a place, somebody. I'm running out of places. Oh, in Prague, okay. And so here we go. I'll watch. So it's waiting to start, and as it finally kicks off the job of generating the image, it'll change to 0% or 1% or something like that. So there we go. So 0% looks like this, and it only does 2 or 3 of them. There we go. 130. Oh, I'm already liking where this is going. We had a couple of our all of our staff at DLI have our profile pictures on our website, and a couple of us turned ourselves into Muppets last night. That was fun. I did not try Pokemon, so that is and so you can see how we've given it very little to go on, but it's created something certainly that I would not be able to do by hand. Were there any full prompts that someone wanted me to give a try? Something completely different from, I will grab yours, Amy, just since it's in the same framework, but it's, okay. A panda as a tourist in Mombasa. Oh, here we go. We'll kick this off. So imagine 3 nurses in a clinical simulation using VR headsets with a virtual mannequin. Very cool. Very, very cool. And if I have these and they're available online, right? So if I make one and you would like to see it, just let me know. Either I'll try to say afterwards, or you can send me an email, because you can click on them and then open them in the browser, and then like this is now a link that you all could see. It creates these images and uploads them on a publicly available space. And that's something to remember when you create the images here. Unless you create the highest tier paid account, all of the things you create are in fact, it's part of their data set. It cannot be made private. So just something to keep in mind. Where Oh, it's okay. It's still waiting to start. I might need to do that one again. It seems it didn't quite kick off correctly. And then I'll go back to my slides for a minute. So it's definitely a great place to have fun. You can see we gave it very little. And if I switch back over to the public space, you'll see that some folks are really good at giving it context and better descriptions, right? So the more descriptors you provide, the better results you're going to get from this. Here we go. So here's one that's, you know, an entire paragraph, right? That's really important if you really want to kind of create something more specific. In similar ways to ChatGPT, word choice really matters, but it is not a natural language model recognizing grammar in the way that ChatGPT does. Not yet, at least. They're continuing to evolve to better incorporate that. And so you don't have to talk to it the way you talk to chat or to a person. You can still use that more terse kind of search engine syntax. For now, that works best. It doesn't matter to use grammar. It's better to focus on what you want the image to contain rather than what you want to exclude. However, there are parameters and dials you can turn to kind of affect that. Something we haven't done yet is run a variation. So we've been starting fresh each time. So here's our nurses in VR, and I'll kind of click that up. You can kind of get a sense. Don't look at that hand. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. That's not quite right, is it? So if we wanted to remix on one of these in particular, let's say we like the first one, we could do this V1. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. It will kind of re-roll or remix based on that particular image. So you can kind of refine a bit. But I also would recommend kind of taking a prompt and adding more and more context to it. Now you'll see that all 4 of these are kind of much more similar. The double colon, this is a little bit more advanced, but I'll paste this into, I'll just bring this up here. So by default, it will take hot dog as a single concept. But if we wanted to split hot and dog into 2 concepts, we could use this double colon to really let it know that that's what we mean. You can kind of get a sense of what it's going to create based on that. And when you use those double colons, I'll scroll down a bit, you can weigh them. You can manipulate the dials instead of them just being spread out evenly. And so if you wanted a really hot dog, then you could do something like : 2 and no number after the dog. And so that is a way to really kind of fine tune in addition to the particular language that you choose, as well as here's some ways to kind of remove some things like I mentioned a second ago. So if we have the vibrant tulip fields, it will generate something like this. But if we really want to dial down the red, then we would separate, vibrant tulip fields is one concept, red is another concept, and we want to -0.5 that, which is essentially using that no parameter. And so we've completely kind of stripped the red from the image. And I'm quite impressed with their documentation. So I would say definitely take a look at that. They are, it's very readable and quick to read, and you can get very complex with these prompts. I didn't show a complex one today. I don't know if we could, so you could see here's someone that's using a lot of parameters, right? And so this is the model they want to use, and the tweaks on the model, and then kind of the sizing and all kinds of things, because it has all the defaults baked in. It creates a square image. Well, maybe I want a widescreen, aspect ratio, all those kind of things. So things it does not do well that I have come across in particular are fingers, as you saw in that one image. Yeah, you will have people with not 5 fingers. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so you will have people with a lot of fingers or no fingers, and it's working on that. And low sample size references. So my favorite thing to do with it is like take my public profile image and turn me into something, And it doesn't, that's one image in its data set that it has to work off of, versus if you've got a celebrity doppelganger, you might get a lot better results with that, because the thousands or millions of images that are out there that it's been trained on with that celebrity, you can get a much better face. Regarding, it's very timely to think about the issues, social issues around this type of AI. I'm not a professional artist, so I certainly don't want to speak to the complexity of the issues around this, but just this past week, and I've got the link to this Verge article, paste that in the chat, a great write-up of what happened here, the scenario, an interview with the artist and their lawyer, copyright office, kind of changing as they further understood what happened. And so we're definitely going to see a lot of momentum and change in this area as we kind of understand what it means. And I think that's, I'm going to stop there for questions. Here again, you can see bad faces, bad hands, but the general concept was kind of spot on. And I have not been looking at chat, so might need some help picking which questions need.
Yeah, sorry, Michael, it's going fast and furious, which is great. There's a lot of conversations around, can you use these images? And they are, sorry, they are Creative Commons. What's happened to my voice?
Something I want to point out there is the free account. Everything you create is this license. If you pay, then you get their commercial terms as part of their TOS. So I would review both of those and determine if it's acceptable for your particular use. Paste this link.
Folks are also thinking about, sorry, they're just spinning off on the different things they could make, caricatures.
Absolutely, could
thinking about what directions can you go? Can you specify gender? They noticed that the nurses in the VR were all white.
So those are great examples of better context we should have provided, right? 3 was really good. If we would have just said nurses, we would have got variance in the number. And so if we wanted to specifically create variance around a lot of other factors, then you would want to put those in, yeah.
Michael, someone asked a question about like maybe how you could interact with students and these images. I don't know if you have any ideas about what that might look like. It might not happen in Midjourney. Are you thinking about something like that?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of opportunity for very interesting assignments where students would create accounts if everyone's comfortable with, I mean, you'd have to do that, or you'd have to have them send you the prompts and you do it on their behalf, however you wanted to facilitate that. But if you had an assignment where there was a concept you wanted to have it reflect, there's kind of a learning of how to describe the mental model of whatever that concept is, right? And so transferring what they've learned into a prompt to input is its own exercise. Determining if that output from Midjourney is relevant or accurate is another exercise. So there's a lot of opportunity for that, I think. I see something.
Amy asked, what's the difference between the V and the U buttons under the image?
Sure. So again, there's 4 images, and so it's 1, 2, 3, 4. The U means upscale. By default, it just gives you a low pixel image. If you want to make a bigger one, you would upscale that in particular. Variation V means kind of re-roll based on that specific one, which is much more useful if you use some of the parameters to tell it, give me 4 really different images, because you could see by default, it gives you kind of 4 similar ones. You could say, give me 4 really different images. And then you could say, yeah, that's the one, number 3. I want to kind of re-roll based on that one.
Chris, did you see any themes or specific questions in the chat that I missed? There's some more new ones coming in.
Yeah, I think there are definitely questions that I was seeing around. Yeah, so we talked about copyright. We talked about Creative Commons. Yeah,
my understanding is you need to cite the author and the AI at this point. That may evolve over time. And I'm not a copyright expert, so please, if someone knows better, correct me if that was wrong.
Yeah.
right? And some people are giving tips on
Yeah, I
what
love
they
that,
do in
Dave.
chat,
Dave,
which is great.
what bias? Right, as we mentioned, right, there was a gender and an ethnicity bias in that image that we, yeah.
But it's a good example. This is why we get to all look. We get to. You have to specifically ask and request a diverse group.
Yeah. Megan, that's
Yeah,
a great
Megan.
question about where these
Yeah.
images are coming from, right? I mean, publicly available images, which have already been indexed, you know, by Google. Certainly the licensing around those is murky in many sites. And did any of those users knowingly offer their images to Midjourney? I doubt most of them did, but they didn't specify that it couldn't, and here we are.
Yeah, I don't know if it's sorted out at all when it had rights reserved. I'm guessing not, because all of the suing is coming from comic book. Well, right now that particular one is comic book artists seeing that Midjourney can make images using their style.
Yeah, I think in one case I was listening to a story about people who use Deviant Art, I think is the site. It was a very popular website at one point. And I think some artists are still use that website a lot. So you can go read about that one.
I'll try to find an article about that. Yeah, several popular media sharing sites are suing. I don't know if it's specifically Midjourney, but they're definitely running into issues where their art's being stolen and misused.
All right, so I just had one more section that I wanted to touch on. We're not going to do demos for this one. There's somebody racing cars outside my window, sorry. So I'll go ahead and share. And this is related to another set of AI tools that are being used, and that's AI detection tools. So this is a pretty controversial, worried topic that we have here in education. So just want to touch on it for a minute and talk about where we are in the process of having AI detection tools. We're already seeing that ChatGPT and Midjourney and everything else are evolving quite quickly. And any tools that have been created that are specifically to catch ChatGPT are having a hard time catching up. They're in beta form. So it's a little tricky about whether you're going to be able to do this. If you're interested in knowing what some of the tools are that are out there right now, Zero GPT was created by a student from Stanford. I can't remember. Sorry, student out there. Soon after ChatGPT came on the scene, the ChatGPT or OpenAI has their own content detector yet. Turnitin, which is a traditional plagiarism tool used at lots of universities. Compare essays. They aren't really tuned in to ChatGPT content, but they're developing something. Hugging Face is a one that you can use in order to track down whether images are AI generated. And there's a lot more, and I don't have all the details on these. But the first thing I want to note is this is AI checking AI, right? Like it's not a human making a value judgment, and they're always in competition with each other in terms of development. So I've already talked about the beta software, and because it is new, there's a lot of false positive and negatives. So we don't want to be blaming students or accusing them without a little bit of our own human judgment. I can do interventions that will confuse the software. So for example, if I created something in Jasper AI, which is another chat tool, and then put it into ChatGPT and move content back and forth, it can pass detection more easily. And there's also a privacy issue that we've already just hit on in the use of the generative AI. If I cut and paste my content or a student's content into one of these tools, the detection tools, that is a loss of privacy there. And just from a kind of psychological standpoint for students, using these tools kind of says, I think you're going to chat or cheat from the onset. And I'm not sure that's really what we want to say to students. So some alternatives instead of using AI detection software, and it's not illegal to use it. I think you can use it if you think about it judiciously. But there's also some things that we can do when we're thinking about the assessments and assignments they're giving them. Anything that's personalized in the sense of talk to me about such and such a concept that is reflective of the conversations that we've been having in class. As we've already said, the AI, or at least ChatGPT, is only trained up to, I think it's September of 2021. So if you had a recent article or some scenario that's going out in the real world, ChatGPT would not be able to help them effectively. Also taking assignments, like a writing assignment, and scaffolding it so that they have to put in maybe a thesis statement and then an outline and then a draft and then a final, which I know increases the amount of grading that happens, and I am sorry for that. But if you do want to make sure it's original work, that's one of the ways to do it. And then maybe changing up the way that they're making their assessment, or the kind of types of assessment they're doing. Maybe they're doing an oral presentation. Is there something else that you can have them do? Some folks are thinking about having them write in class so that it's handwritten. We just need to be careful of the fact that that will be accessibility issues for students that aren't able to handwrite, so they'll need a computer. What happens if you have a student miss class? Then you're going to have them make it up at some other time. So I wouldn't make it a super heavy assessment kind of way to go about that. All right, so I did want to do one more thing. I'm sorry, I'm going to look in chat. Maybe folks are talking about other things. Authenticate works in the same way that Turnitin does. It's looking for research papers and making sure that it's not capturing that content. So it's not going to be a tool that will catch this. Princeton student, thank you, Quincy. Got that wrong. Princeton, Stanford, smart students. A smart student, please. All right, so I am going to go ahead and do one more thing here. Hold on.
While you're doing that, Elise, I wanted to just kind of reiterate Amy's point, which is because Authenticate is a Turnitin product, we can assume that when Turnitin fully develops whatever AI detection solution they're working on, that it will eventually be incorporated into Authenticate, but we don't have any knowledge of how that's going to, when that's going to happen or how.
All right, so I have one more poll to see what our post thoughts are after watching these guys today. I'm gonna let folks vote a little longer.
Yeah, Katerina, I think that's a great question, because I think we're at a point in time, and in 6 months or 18 months, we'll be at a very different point in time with how these tools work and who else is using AI in this way, right? So you mentioned Grammarly, but we already know Microsoft's making a big investment here. So what does it mean when Outlook and Word have a tool like this built into them, is where my mind is at. I mean, today you go to ChatGPT, in a year, you might not. You will just use whatever you normally use. And we need to start reflecting on that future now. I don't have answers on how we should best deal with it quite yet.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and share the results. Just say there's quite a bit of excitement and trepidation. Not a couple people, 1 or 2 people are not going to return to this topic again. And I get that too. All right, I want to thank you guys so much for attending today. It's really great. We're going to have a couple minutes left over if we do want to have a more open conversation. We have 10 more minutes, is that right? Yeah, about 10, 15 more minutes. But I would just want to point out a couple of things that we can do to get you guys some more information. At our website, we have a new updated page on AI that's in there. You guys are already getting our newsletters. We'll update you with workshops and whatnot. And I'm seeing a lot of engaged people that are thinking about this. I'm coordinating the AI efforts at Learning Innovation. I want to invite anyone who's interested in this to connect with me, or if you're willing to write a blog post to tell us about your experiences and tips or what you think, I would super want to hear from you. So I know you're that person, so reach out. All right, so if you want to unmute yourself, if there's something else that folks want to dive into, I invite you to do that for another couple of minutes. And if not, we'll see you all later. David, you have your hand raised. You can go ahead.
Yeah, of the tools that I guess we looked at Midjourney for images. Do you know, maybe one of the experts here, which image generation does the best at like in painting, where you erase part of the image and then ask for something? I know DALL-E does that. Are you familiar with others, or which one's best?
I would have to defer to someone else. I've not worked with them in that way.
Yeah, I haven't done that. I haven't done the deep dive on images yet. It's like running after a moving train, some of this, right?
Katarina says Midjourney doesn't do that at all. So
yeah. Oh, Quincy.
Yeah, thank you. Great presentation. Question I have. So wait, this is for ChatGPT. When you pay for an account, do you have an ability to provide, I guess, a sandbox or a predictive bit of information for that algorithm to learn from? I was thinking like if you wanted to use, I was using an example like Duke terms, and have it be able to interact with you with Duke acronyms, et cetera. I'm not saying it would do that. I'm just giving an example. Are you really just stuck with using what the machine has developed from the last 5 years of learning up to 2021 at this rate? I'm just wondering how that works.
at this time, that's correct. But my understanding is they're working on their API and the ability to do things like that. So custom data sets are in the works.
Okay.
And I assume you will have to pay to get them. That would not be a free feature.
Of course. And the other thing that comes to mind is, yes, even if that's developed and you pay for it because it's a license, then we have to think about the privacy issue. Obviously, if we use Duke, can they actually keep that data sandbox for Duke to access and not them? There's a lot of other legal issues to be thought of, but I'm thinking about the direction of where it would be beneficial to help filter out all the noise on the internet, if you will, in that regard.
And I'll put out a general question to you guys. As I said, I am coordinating all the AI activities that we're having. Are there other things that you're thinking about that you'd really like to know, dive into, hope to learn about? Don't know, your head's going to explode. We already said so much today.
That's a really good point. False detection is a major concern. I think even GPT-0 you mentioned, right? I think it's false positives are real, and it's definitely something faculty are going to want to think about when they're crafting their course policies. So yeah, I think we at least touched on that, but I think it's worth going deeper and making sure that we you know, put students first and think about that they're trying their best as well, essentially. This, you know, imagine if you wrote a paper and it was completely original and then it was flagged as AI writing. That would be awful. And I think that happens in 9 to 10% of it was on there, right? So I just imagine
Yeah,
that being
and I've within the AI page that I keep copying and pasting, I've included all of my favorite hyperlinks to the best articles that I found so far. So I do invite you to click into those so that you don't have to do the Google search, or you can ask ChatGPT to find the top articles for you on whatever. Whether or not it'll give you the best ones, I don't know.
whether there'll be real links, also dubious.
There's so many things. So many things. But, you know, we laugh now, but who knows in 6 months, maybe, you know, it's going to be able to do that work. We don't know yet. Yeah, David, so one of the good suggestions that I see out there is having students tell you about the prompts they're gonna put in there, have ChatGPT put it out, talk to them about the fact that it doesn't know how to cite, doesn't know what it's doing, the things that it does wrong, and the students would take the text from ChatGPT and highlight, you know, bold or highlight the stuff that's from them, and then put in a different color what they said or what they wrote, and kind of you could do a cover letter about how you changed ChatGPT. I think there's a lot of possibility for helping them with drafts, certainly for brainstorming. Like you could have students who are working in a group and the question of the day is posed. Sometimes you do group work that way. Maybe the students do group work together and then they ask ChatGPT what it thinks. And they integrate that or say, oh God, that's super wrong, and explain why. So there's so many ways that you could go about it. It's early days, so kind of knowing where you stand in relationship to your course and the conversations that you want to have with your students about it is probably the most important step that you can take right now, and filter through the rest as you go on. All right, I am so happy we all had this conversation today. I'm going to give 1 more minute for anything else that you guys want to bring up. And as I said, we'll send you this recording, our slides, the chat itself, because that's super important, what's happening in the chat right now.
I'll also say too, I feel like I learn something new every time I come to one of these sessions. Like last time Robert mentioned mermaid and then I went off on this whole tangent and wormhole of looking up tools that talk to other tools that talk to ChatGPT. And yeah, that's just a really fascinating world of exploration and growth, and very bizarre pictures on Midjourney.
I'm using my new Muppet avatar picture everywhere now. Super excited. Thank you, Michael.
Those pictures from Midjourney could be really good for creative writing prompts.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Yes, and I'm going to push it again. As you start to experiment, come tell me what you've been doing and how you're thinking about that with your student, because it's our job at Learning Innovation to disseminate great information about teaching. So we're always here to find out what's going on in your class. All right, I'm gonna just wrap this up. I want to thank Michael and Chris for doing the heavy lifting today. And I want to thank everyone who came today to talk about this really important topic. Bye, everybody.